Good morning, everybody. It's your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, a wandering author, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. As always, my message remains the same. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. Today, I'm coming at you from Butler Branch, Brushy Creek in Smith Lake. This is probably the furthest that I have traveled. It's a little less crowded than it was yesterday. As you can see, I found a nice little secluded spot to kind of talk about our topic today, which is going to be kind of a broader view of Stoicism. So we've discussed, oh man, look at these waves coming in. We've discussed the four virtues as defined by the Stoics, which were courage, wisdom, prudence, and temperance. And overall, Stoicism was founded by Zeno of Citium, and it was originally called Zenoism, but they renamed it so it wouldn't become a cult personality. So our ancestors in Greece were dealing with the same issues that we deal with today, which is where like material culture and stuff was not making people happy. And they needed a way to figure out how to live, right? And so they cultivated this eudaimonistic theory, which is like a theory of flourishing. Like, how do we become the best people that we can be, right? And they really kind of bring it down to two general topics: living in accordance with nature, like living in harmony with what's around us, and then living in accordance with our own nature, right? So every creature, an animal, a plant, they all have their own nature. So like for a plant, it's to grow towards the sun. For an animal, taking care of its babies, basically. And then there's a process that the Greeks called wikiosis. Translated as like appropriation or orientation. It's basically like where we realize our place in the world. Stage one reflects to ourselves and like our own feelings and thoughts. And then stage two is like relating to our social bonds, how we relate with other people in our society. So Cicero defined what goodness is as what is complete according to the nature of a rational being for a rational being. In other words, he basically said that the only thing necessary for happiness was virtue, and that the only thing that is evil is vice. Now, unfortunately, in our current society, vice really comes down to our passions, or as the Greeks called it, pathos. And we really, like our whole advertising, all of that stuff's really kind of centered around that, which the Greeks, they call the pathos, is basically a movement of the soul. It's really any craving, anything that is not in accordance with our nature being. So they created a table of 4 different types of pathos or passions: pleasure, appetite, distress, and fear, right? So distress is a contraction of the soul associated with malice, envy, jealousy, pity, grief, worry, sorry, annoyance, vexation, anguish. Basically, if we're worried about something that's out of our controls, then we are in distress, and that's a passion, which is not something that we should be experiencing. Fear is a shrinking of the soul, another passion or pathos, associated with hesitation, agony, shock, shame, panic, superstition, dread, terror. Again, this is because we're worried about things that are out of our control, but this time we're worried about things that are in the future. Now, appetites is kind of like the word for craving, right? So it's a want, a yearning. It could even be a hatred, quarrelsomeness, anger, wrath, lust. Any of these things are like strong desires we have that don't really relate to our virtue. Pleasure is another pathos. It can be summarized as self-gratification, rapture, enchantment with something, misfortune, or rejoicing at another person's misfortune. So if you find yourself being happy that somebody else is having a hard time, that means that you're probably not living virtuously. Another way to say that is you might be kind of an asshole. A virtuous person, on the other hand, they have 3 good states of affective responses, right? So actual joy, which is the opposite of pleasure. So pleasure is like, I mean, if we put it in modern sense, the way that I understand it is kind of like chasing dopamine fixes, you know, like whether it's drugs, whether it's video games, whether it's TV, whether it's eating too much. Whereas joy is actual being enjoyment, kind of similar to equanimity, tranquility, being in good spirits. Caution is the opposite to fear. This is a good thing to have. The Greeks called this eulabeia, and it's associated with respect and sanctity, right? So if you have like a healthy respect or reverence for something, you might be cautious, but that's not the same thing as being afraid or being taken a hold of by your pathos. Finally, we have wish, which is the opposite of appetite, right? So an appetite's a craving. A wish is something that you want, but that's good. So it's associated with goodwill, kindliness, acceptance, or contentment. Now, there is a whole class of other things that the Stoics called the indifferents. So these are things that aren't good or bad. The most prominent one would be money, right? So money can be kind of good in that you can use it to accomplish things, but by itself it isn't good or bad. However, if you seek the indifference, like things like food, sex, money, too much, then it does become bad. Seneca has a quote related to this where he says, pleasures, when they go beyond a certain limit, are but punishments, right? And so, to the Greek Stoics, they came up with the ultimate conclusion that the only way to be happy is to live a life of virtue. So, and that's all related to your actions, which directly affect your thoughts. And so, unfortunately, our modern culture really pushes the pathos on us, whether it's like the feeling like you're not enough because you see somebody else with more money. Most of the time it's money related. We have a consumerist culture that is just obsessed with money, right? So, that's why I do all of the stuff that I do and you guys see me do every day, is none of this stuff costs any money. It's enjoyable. And then I try really hard to be a good and kind person to everybody that I come into contact with. I've spent a lot of time around wealthy people in my life, and a lot of them are assholes. Straight up. There's definitely good people out there though, but I believe that most of us could benefit by focusing on our virtuous natures a little more and focusing on acquiring goods a little less, which is why I'm always saying spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. So my question for you guys today is, how are you cultivating virtue in your own lives? How are you falling short and being victims of your pathos? And what can you do in order to change that? Personally, I get distracted with sugar. I love soda. Very unhealthy for me. Totally a waste of money. And I really like cookies and candy. Totally appetitive. Does not help me. Probably a waste of money. Definitely a waste of money. Definitely not healthy for me physically. And then I could probably spend a little more time trying to interact with other people. I've kind of always been a loner. But I do this, and I stay active on social media and try to push out positive stuff pretty frequently, every day actually. So I know that there may be some room for me to improve, but I feel like I'm doing all right overall. Anyways, that's really all I have for you guys today. I've got about 2.5 miles, or maybe even 3 or 4 miles to paddleboard back, so that's going to take me a little while. I'm going to have to go ahead and get started on that. But anyways, as always, this is your favorite aspiring revolutionary here, a wandering author, reminding you that we are all the authors of our own lives. Spend less, live more, earn your freedom with frugality. What are you guys doing to inspire, uplift, and empower your community today? Because this world isn't changing unless we all do our part, and you can count on me to do mine daily. Love you guys. Till next time.